Welcome back. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. Our big focus this hour, the U.S. Senate has cleared the Russia sanctions bill with 86 senators backing it. India is amongst the countries that could face the impact. The bill would give President Trump the power to impose tariffs of up to 100% on countries buying Russian oil and gas, along with sanctions targeting Russia's shadow fleet, shipping companies, insurers, banks and oligarchs. But these tariffs would be optional, not automatic, and countries could seek exemptions by reducing their dependence on Russian energy. The bill now is moving to the House of Representatives, where Republicans hold 218 seats against 212 Democrats, with 1 independent and 4 vacancies. If the House passes it, the bill could then go to Trump for his signature. Senator Rand Paul, though, has already warned that sanctioning India could alienate one of America's closest strategic partners and a potential counterweight to China. The stakes are certainly high because Russia accounted for around 52% of India's crude imports in June, compared with roughly 10 to 12% from Saudi Arabia, 8 to 10% from Iraq, and 7 to 8% from the UAE. So the big question is, will Trump use this new power against India, or will Washington choose a strategic partnership over sanctions? Joining us to discuss this is Dr. Sharat Kohli, senior economist. Pramit Pal Chaudhary, analyst, Eurasia Group, joins us. Ambassador Manjot Seth, former diplomat, is also live with us. Raymond Vickery, former assistant secretary of commerce, is also joining us live from the United States of America. Raymond Vickery, let me begin with you first. How unanimous was the support for this Russia bill when it did come up for voting there? Also, how soon could we see the tariffs possibly kick in? What are the chances that India could be hard hit as well? And about how many, senators and congressmen actually echo what Rand Paul has come out and said, that don't sacrifice strategic partnerships simply for these short-term tariffs?
Well, thanks for letting me comment on this. It seems to me that what you have here is a movement in the United States Congress, really in part based upon sentiment in regard to the late Senator Lindsey Graham, who was the proponent of this bill, the chief advocate for it. There were only 11 votes out of 100 in the United States Senate that were against this bill. So it has strong bipartisan support. What's going on, it seems to me, is a forcing of the question of what the obligations are of other nations, India, China, the Slovakia Republic, Azerbaijan, Hungary, in regard to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is a very difficult political situation, of course, in India. I'll let others speak to that. But in the United States, I think that there is a growing bipartisan support for putting an end to what is the worst transgression of the principles of the UN Charter in some 80 years. It seems to me that the question now is how to put a stop to the carnage. There have been over 2 million casualties so far, some 500,000 deaths. The carnage is running at 10,000 or so deaths per month, and it is a major threat to world peace. The question is, does India see it that way? Or is India going to take a separate course, the traditional course, and say, well, we can deal with whomever we please? And of course, India can. It's a sovereign nation. It can do whatever it wants. But trade and economic engagement has strategic implications, and this is one of them. This is not an automatic sanctions situation. It is really an invitation to India, particularly, to engage in regard to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Whether India will take the opportunity to do that, or what it has more traditionally done, and saying that, well, the problems of Europe and the West are not necessarily the problems of India, and go on, and that way it remains to be seen. But make no mistake about it, this question of the Russian invasion and the war in Ukraine is a very, very serious matter. There are other serious matters, of course, in regard to war and peace, southern Lebanon, but that does not detract from the scope and scale of the problem which is presented to the international community by the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Dr. Sharad Kohli. Dr. Sharad Kohli, it seems that the buzzword these days in the United States of America is tariff. There are tariffs everywhere and all kinds of them. Now a new tariff could again be slapped on countries, including India, very soon. Although this is again still a question mark, as are many of the US's actions these days a big question mark. Will they or won't they? Dr. Kohli, will they slap these tariffs or won't they? What is your informed assessment telling you?
Good evening, Uday, to you, my fellow panelists and the viewers. I agree with the two senators who said this will be a shot in their own foot, actually, if you ask me. The most ironical part is I have with me the data with regard to US's imports from Russia. Even today, $1.6 billion of imports are being done by the US from Russia as we speak today. If you want, I can name the items also. There are uranium, there are metal products, there are some agricultural products as well. So people who live in glass houses, I should not be throwing stones at others. Well, this tariff game there's enough of this tariff game. It's been going on from 2nd of April, 2025. I think the world is getting tired. There is a bit of fatigue which is now coming in this tariff game. $100 billion is what Donald Trump administration had to refund to the importers in America. And for God's sake, who is paying the tariffs? It's not the exporters, it's the importers across America. It's the people of America who are ultimately bearing the brunt of these tariffs. And, this includes 5 countries, by the way, the bipartisan group, the bill. And, when someone dies in our country, in memorial, I think the ambassador would agree with me, in memorial to the people who die, honorable people, we build statues, we build memorials. In honor of Lindsey Graham, who died unfortunately as a senator, what was done? Lindsey Graham sanctioning Russia and Iran Act 2026, basically a negative propaganda against the world, to impose tariffs on India, on China, on Slovakia, on Turkey, and on Azerbaijan. These are the 5 countries, they are top 5. Now, what I fail to understand, Uday, here is this tariff, because this is supposed to be on top 5 countries. So is this just a game of numbers? Because there's a long list of countries who are importing oil from Russia. So why impose on the top 5 of them? Has it got something to do with the numbers? What kind of a bill is this? Either you import or you don't import. As for India is concerned today, India is a sovereign nation. We know how to look after our national interests. Whatever works good for our economy, whatever works good for our country, we are going to do that. We are not going to come under any kind of threats by America. Let this bill be passed. I care a damn. Let the House of Representatives pass that. Let President sign. It is going to be America's own loss. He's heading for midterm poll in November. He's trying to please a group of MAGA supporters. But does he have approval of the people of America? Look at his approval rating at this point of time, Uday. It is a recipe for disaster as far as the American economy is concerned. As far as India is concerned, we Indians really do not care. This has happened on dozens and dozens of occasions over the last 1.5 years. Sometimes accidentally I end up calling him Donald Tariff instead of Donald Trump. We really don't care. And I think the life goes on for us. It is for him to worry what happens to America here on, Uday.
All right, let me take that to you as well, Pramit Pal Chaudhary. Pramit Pal, given how the US has been serious in mending this relationship with India, and we have seen some earnest efforts on that ground, also indications by our Union Commerce Minister that possibly this interim agreement on trade could be announced very soon. Could this actually be a big blow if it indeed comes into effect, these fresh tariffs?
Well, actually, what seems to have happened now with the India-US FTA, that is India is perfectly happy with the 10% status quo that we have right now. And we've seen President Donald Trump seemingly lose interest in the FTA. He said almost absolutely nothing about it over the past few months. So what we're seeing is the USTR, the U.S. Trade Representative Office, taking over the negotiations and finding India basically saying, well, we don't have to do an FTA, or we can keep delaying the FTA and live with the 10% tariff. So I will not rule out the possibility that the Russian tariffs may be used in an attempt to force India back onto the negotiating table at some later point in the next couple of months. That we'll have to see. The the thing I think we should keep in mind is that yes, what we have done is part of sort of a package deal that India worked out with the Trump administration, is that besides the FTA, India also agreed to buy LNG, LPG, and some defense equipment from the United States. In fact, right now, going by present contracts, 25% of India's LNG imports and about 25% of our LPG imports by next year will be coming from the United States. And that does not even include the roughly 14 plus million barrels of oil we are buying from Venezuela, which the United States now treats as American oil. And therefore, we have a package deal of other things which the Trump administration basically has agreed to. It's one reason I think Trump is losing interest in the FTA per se. So you have a bunch of other economic agreements with the United States, some of them which could come under question if tariffs are imposed on India in a way that India finds unacceptable. The only thing I'll also add, it is not the first time the U.S. government has been toying with the idea of imposing tariffs or sanctions on India on Russian oil. Each time it has walked back for a simple reason. One, if India does not, and India and China together, do not refine medium heavy crude from Russia, the West runs out of diesel oil. They don't refine enough diesel for themselves. India's Russian oil is almost all converted into diesel and sold to Europe. So the United States, MAGA truck drivers, for example, would have a difficulty if China and India stopped refining diesel. And both countries have basically said, as they've said in the past, you can sanction, we'll stop buying Russian oil, that's fine. But where are you going to get your diesel from? Because you don't know how to, you don't make it anymore because you don't have the refining capacity, and you've stopped making refineries in both countries. So I think India, on the other hand, can find other sources of oil. There is actually a surplus of oil in the world. Venezuelan medium crude, for example, that we're importing is very similar to Russian oil. But diesel cannot be replaced anywhere, and that would be immediately what we lost in the West if India stops refining Russian oil.
Okay, let me take that to you as well, Ambassador Manju Seth. Firstly, what is the likelihood that this will clear the House of Representatives according to you? And second, what is the likelihood that it will actually be implemented very soon, given the geopolitics that continue with the uncertainty on the war ending and the way oil prices anyways are these days, Ambassador Seth?
Yeah, anyway, they are fluctuating so much. So, no, absolutely, I think it might clear because the sentiment is so pro in the MAGA and everything, and so they might clear it, and they find a convenient beating stick for India, Africa. India and China, saying that they are the culprits. Let's target them, and also because they feel that they are both India and China are trying to follow a slightly independent path, and they would like to browbeat both countries in some way or the other to make them fall in line. They're not able to understand that how are these countries' economies still doing reasonably well. And I think they are now getting worried about how their own economy is totally under a lot of stress because of the actions of the tariff action that have been going on for the last 1.5 years. I think now the possibility is, because of the sentiment that is there, it might be passed in the House of Representatives as well. But whether Donald Trump will continue to use it as hold it like a Damocles sword or something, or actually announce the tariffs. That remains to be seen. But I think it may the bill might be passed in both houses. And after that, of course, it has to come into a law, and then President Trump has to decide whether he wants to use this. It only empowers him, and it doesn't become automatically applicable. So I think they might pass it because the sentiment is so much that America needs to be made great again, and America needs to be protected. American interests are to be protected, and India and China appear to them, or they would like to paint Americans would like to paint China and India with this. With the feeling or with the brush, saying that they are both a threat to America. They are the cause for all the problems in America. They are the cause for the continuing war in Russia. So this is trying to find scapegoats and find someone to blame. And when it is really not, it's not really, both the countries are neither involved, neither were they in any way instrumental in initiating these wars or supporting them in any way. And I find that the way the American president has been following his tariff policies, his tariff, it's already been, the Supreme Court and other, courts, it has not met judicial scrutiny. They're being scrapped. So, it's up and down. He imposes a tariff, then it gets cancelled, then he imposes another one. So I think it looks more like a game. And as very rightly mentioned by Mr. Kohli, it's becoming, there's absolute fatigue, and people are quite fed up with what is happening. And I don't think India and China are going to, they might be able to take this temporary pain, because I think what is happening is that the US is now in a desperate position, given that the Iran war is not gone the way that it wanted. The Ukraine war is also not ending as in the way that President Trump wanted, and Russia is not ready to listen to what the US is saying. So I think there is some chance of that, because I think both US and Russia and Ukraine do want to end this war, as do the other war that is going on, Iran-US war. Also, both sides do want to end it, but the way that things are going, it's going to be a long way off, with all sides agreeing, then disagreeing, and reneging on what they have agreed to. So I think there's this kind of double standards and double speak that is going on everywhere. I think is something which, at least for India, it is something which is we're not ready to accept. And I think that message is going quite clearly to the US and to other countries in the
Okay,
West.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me take that back to you. Raymond Vickery, on, of course, this bill coming at a time also when we see the hit that the Iran war has given to the economy in the US, and we've seen the kind of turmoil globally because of it. Also, the oil prices fluctuation. Could this, bill really then become an actuality, or is this just a threat? Is this just a, optics game ultimately?
Well, with President Trump, you always have an optics game going on. You can argue that that is the case with others on the world stage, but it is certainly the case with President Trump. And he was not in favor of this bill originally. He's really been talked into it by a bipartisan coalition. So where it would actually come out is an open question. I think there are 2 points here. The basic question is, what is India and what is the United States and Western allies going to do together to try to bring peace and stability and some semblance of a rule of law in regard to the Russian invasion of Ukraine? If the answer to that is nothing, because it doesn't have any effect on India, well, then India is perfectly able to go its own way. But trade and not cooperating will have its consequences. Maybe the consequence will be that India will have to rely more on its arch concern of China. The second thing is you should not confuse what is going on in regard to a sanctions bill in Russia, Ukraine, with the overall question of Liberation Day tariffs, so-called. It is absolutely clear that under U.S. law, the Supreme Court has ruled that President Trump did not have the authority to do that. He doesn't have the authority to go forward under Section 301 as a substitute for it. But the question of what happens in Ukraine and Russia is a separate one. And India must decide for itself what's in its own interest, not just economically, but in terms of its responsible participation in the world order, in trying to build peace and prosperity, as opposed to just saying, India is a great nation, we'll do as we please, and the rest of the world can do whatever it wants, and it won't make any difference. It will make a difference. It's going to make a big difference. And so the question is whether or not you can figure out a way to work together, or whether or not you're going to take a different path. I think that this is an opportunity for the U.S. and India to work together on this problem of Russia and Ukraine, as opposed to saying that we will do it our way or you'll do it your way, and that'll be it. And this should not be confused with the question of Iran and that war. The verities in who is responsible and what can be done there are not the same as what is going on in Russia and Ukraine. So India has been a responsible actor internationally from the very first. It was a founding member of the United Nations. It took a different course during the Cold War, and that didn't really work out too well for India. India wound up being broke in the early 1990s when the Soviet Union dissolved. So India is going to have to make some very important decisions for itself. As to the question of diesel, if diesel is so important and is the Achilles heel of this, there's perfectly a possibility that diesel would simply be exempted. And then is India going to say, no, I'm not going to refine this and send it to the U.S.?
Okay.
So it's
Dr. Kohli, 30 seconds. Dr. Kohli, 30 seconds. What's happening next?
Well, India definitely is not going broke. India knows how to take care of interests. And just a quick comment here is that if what America thinks about Russia and Ukraine,
yes,
if even 1% is thought about Iran, who initiated Iran war, how many people have died in Iran, I think it'll give us a better understanding of the thoughts and feelings behind. Uday.
Okay, let's leave it at that. My thanks to our guests for joining us. We've run totally out of time. We're going to slip into a short break.